Quick summary of this tutorial. This is the second video in this series of React image upload, retrieve and delete with ASP.NET Core Web API. In previous tutorial we have implemented image upload. In this tutorial we will be displaying all of the uploaded images back in React application, and we will be implementing rest of the operations image update and delete. Hi all, welcome to CodAffection. Before starting this video, I would like to ask you a favor. If you find this video helpful, please thumbs up this video. If you are new here, please consider subscribing to this channel and click on bell icon to get notification immediately when I upload new videos like this. Most of the video lesson here also has a written blog post. You can find the link in video description and you can grab code from there as well. Without further ado, let's get started with this topic. I have given the link of first part in video description and inside the first comment of this video. Last time we have been discussing serving static files from an ASP.NET Core Web API project. So first of all, I'm going to update this Web API Core project for retrieving the image inside this images folder with a GET request like this. For that, first of all, inside this startup file here, we have to enable serving static files. So we can call this function here use static files. Into this function we have to pass an object of this type static file options, where file provider is equal to new physical file provider. Inside that we have to pass the directory from which we have to serve the static files. So we have to pass directory path for this images folder. So we could do this path.combine function can be called. As a first parameter we have the base path up to the folder images. So environment.content root path, into that we can append this images folder. Along with file provider we have to set this request path /images. So in order to retrieve images inside this images folder, we have to make the request to this URL here. So that's what we have done previously with this request. Before trying that again, first of all we have to build this project. After successful build, reload this page here. Boom. Now we are serving static files from this folder images. Now with this employee controller web method get employees, we can retrieve all of the employees along with the image back to our React project. For that, first of all, inside this employee model we have to add one more property, which is image source. You could see the same property inside our component here, image source. Through this property we will be passing this URL for the image that we have just uploaded. So back to the model class, let's add one more property which is not to be saved inside our table. So add this attribute not mapped string image source. Now back to the web method here. Actually with this return statement here, we are retrieving all of the records inside this employees table through entity framework. We don't have anything to do inside our React with this project image name. Actually we have to have the image path so that we can show the image in our React project. So we have to update this image source property inside this collection here. For that we can execute this link queue expression here by calling this function select. We have this arrow function. Inside that we will return a new model, employee model. First of all we have employee ID. We will be using the same value that we have retrieved from our DB. Employee name, occupation, image name. This should be same as the table column, image name, and finally here we have the image source. Inside this property we have to return an URL for the static file like this. So I'll be doing this. First of all, we will call this function string format. Inside that we have this template. This would be similar to the HTTP or HTTPS. And then we have this domain name. And after that we can pass this images folder and then name of the image. Now let's set values for these properties. request dot schema, it will return the value HTTP or HTTPS. Then request dot host, in this case it will be localhost, then the port number. For the second place we have request dot path base. In most of the case this would be empty string. If there is an alias used for your website, then that will be served through this property. And finally, for the third place we have image name. Since we have some new changes, let's build this project again. Back to the React app here. Now let's make the GET request inside the parent element employee list here. For that, we just need to call this function fetch all. The URL will be same. For that, I will define a new function, refresh employee list. Now let's invoke this function here, fetch all. If this request is successful, we can execute this callback function with response here. Through this GET request, we are retrieving all of the employee records with uploaded image URL. Inside this parent component, I will be saving that inside a state object here. So first of all, let's add corresponding React hook function use state. So here's the list of records, employee list, and corresponding set function. Let's initialize that with an empty array. Now let's call this same set function here. Into that we just need to pass this response dot data, where we have the returned array from our web API project. All of the response will be there inside this data property from response. If there is an error, we will be showing that in console. So let me copy this and pasting here. Now we could call this function after insert operation here. We have to call this same function when this page is completely loaded. For that, we need a lifecycle event like we had in our class-based components in React, like a component did mount. But in case of React hook, we can use another method. First of all, we have to import this function useEffect, and we just need to call that function here, useEffect. Here we have the callback function, and here is our second parameter array. The main use of this function is to define a side effect for a state object. For example, inside this array, if we pass employee list, whenever there is a change of value for this state object employee list, this callback function will be invoked. Now to make an alternative for component did mount, we just need to clear this array. Now this callback function will be invoked when this application is completely loaded here. Now we can call this function refresh employee list. Since we have defined this function as an arrow function using this constant refresh employee list, I think we have to move this function after defining this function here. Or you could define this function in conventional way. Just function, that's it. Now let's assume when page is completely loaded, this employee list state object will be populated with our inserted records. Now we have to show them inside this second div here. Instead of this div, let's add a table and a t-body. Now let's iterate through our array employee list here. So this is what we are going to do. In a single iteration, we'll be displaying a single array with 3 columns. The number of iteration would be 1/4 of number of rows inside the collection. So I will make a new array here, math.ceil employee list dot length divided by 3. So we have to make these much iteration. So this would be a float number. In order to round this number to the next integer number, we have called this function ceil, and we are going to iterate with that array here. So with this separator, all of the elements or the index inside the array can become a part of another array here. And we are going to iterate through that array by calling this map function here. Inside that we have this callback function with element and index. From this function, we just need to return a tr element. So each of the employee record will be displayed in a bootstrap card element, like we have displayed the form in our employee component here. So first of all, I'm going to define a new function here, image card, with a parameter that accepts the record. Inside this, we just need to return this div with the class card from bootstrap. Inside that, we have this card body. First of all, let's show the corresponding employee name. So let's retrieve that from data. Just below that, we can show the occupation. Now about this body div here, let's show corresponding image. We can set the src from our image src property. So data dot image src. I will set these bootstrap classes card image top. We want to show this image in a round circle, so let's add this class rounded circle. Now we can use this function to render employee details inside this td cell here. Before doing so, we have to make sure whether that particular element is present inside this list or not. Suppose there are 4 elements inside this array. So 4 by 3 is equal to 1 point something. So when we round them to next integer, we will have 2. So there will be 2 rows. Inside the first row, we can display first 3 employees. And for the second row, we only have 1 td cell. So always check whether corresponding index is already occupied or not. So we could do this employee list. We could calculate the corresponding index from raw index like this, 3 into I. If it is occupied, we can call this function image card by passing corresponding image record. Else, we will return null. So this is how we can show a single employee inside a td cell. Like this, we have to have 2 more td cell. So let me copy and paste that below, plus 1 for the second cell. Actually, you could avoid this ternary operator for the first td cell because there will be always the first td cell. Let's remove that from here. Back to the application. Boom. So here we have retrieved all of the uploaded images back to our React project from Web API core. Now you could see this error for unique key props. You might be familiar with this error if you have rendered elements through iteration. We just need to set the key property for outer element, which is equal to the index of iteration. Okay, let me save this back to the application. Now we have cleared the error. Now for the proper styling of this table here, I have prepared some CSS rules. Let's paste that inside our global style sheet here. Hope you like this. Now we have to implement update operation for already uploaded images and corresponding details. Now before discussing rest of the operations, let me insert few more employees here. So here we have inserted 5 employees. Now let's implement the update operation. For that, you also want to select any of these employees from this table, and we have to populate corresponding employee details along with the uploaded image here. After making required changes inside these form controls, we just need to submit the form. Corresponding changes will be updated. So first of all, we have to wire up on click event for this card element here. That we can do inside this parent component employee list. So here we have the card for the employees. Let's add an on click event here. Here we have to call a function by passing this data object. When there is a parameter to be passed for an event function, we have to call that function in an anonymous function like this. So here is the function show record details. Into that, we just need to pass this data. Now let's define that function up here, show record details with a single parameter data. Actually, this data represents an object for selected employee. To store that object, I will be creating a separate state object here, record for edit, and the set function set record for edit. Let's initialize that as null. Now inside this click event here, we will set the object with the passed data object. Now as per our requirement, inside the click event we have to show the corresponding employee details inside this form. We have designed this form inside this child component here, employee. So we have to pass this object record for edit to the child element. So let's do that here. Record for edit is equal to record for edit. Now let's access that through props parameter in child component, record for edit. Now I will define a side effect function for this state object with the help of useEffect function. So here it is, useEffect. We have this callback function. It will be called whenever the value inside this record for edit object changes. First of all, inside this function, we will check whether this object record for edit is null or not. If it is not null, we will set the same object into this values object here. So set values function, into that we can pass this record for edit object. So whenever we update this object values, corresponding fields inside this form will be populated. Let's check that here. Boom. When we select any of these employees, corresponding employee details is populated inside this form here. After making required changes, we have to submit this form. When we do that, we have to update corresponding record in our Web API project. For that, we have to update the function add or edit. We have called the function inside this form submit event here. Now, inside this parent function add or edit, we have to handle both insert and update operation. We already implemented insert operation here. In order to identify whether we have an insert or update operation, we can check the value of primary key employee ID here. If employee ID is 0, we can say we have an insert operation, otherwise we have an update operation. I will check the value of employee ID here. So form data dot get function can be called, and we will check the value of employee ID. Since this function returns a string, I will be equating this with 0 as a string. If employee ID is 0, then insert operation will be conducted. Otherwise, we have to implement update operation. For now, I will just copy this function call create here. Instead of create, we have update. Into this function, we have to pass the corresponding ID and the updated object. Updated object is already passed here inside this form data. Now let's pass the ID that we can retrieve like this. If this operation is successful, we will reset the form and we will refresh the employee list. I hope we have done everything for update operation inside this React application. Now let's check what we have to do inside our ASP.NET Core Web API. So with our update operation, we will be consuming this put web method here, put employee model. Like we have done for this post request, we have to add this attribute from form before this model class here. Inside the function, first of all, we will check whether the ID passed through this parameter and the employee ID inside the model is same or not. If they are same, the state of the object will be set as modified. We have some extra works to do since there is a file uploader inside the form. There will be two cases based on whether we have changed previously uploaded image or not. We can check that by using this property inside our model image file. If this property is not null, we can say there is a new image selected for replacing previously uploaded image. So we have to handle that situation inside this put web method here. So here is the if clause, employee model dot image file. If it is not null, first of all, we have to delete the previously uploaded image. And then we have to save the newly selected image. So let's do that here. We have already defined a function for that, save image. Into that we have to pass the corresponding image file. Now before doing this, we have to delete the previously selected image. So let's define one more function here, non-action, public delete image, so that we just need to pass this image name only. First of all, we have to generate the actual physical path for the image from this parameter image name. For that, we just need to copy this line from here and pasting here. Now to delete the particular image, we can do this. File exist function can be called. Inside that, we will check whether this path of image exists or not. If it exists, we will call delete function from this file class here. Delete. Here we could pass the path. Now this function delete an image with this name here. Now let's call the function before update operation. Delete image. Let's pass the image name here. We have not done anything for this property image name in our React application. We are just passing through. Inside this property, we will be having previously uploaded image, which should be there inside this images folder. So before saving and updating newly selected image, we will delete the previously uploaded image so that we can optimize our space. Now let's build this project again. Now I'm going to update this employee here, Daniel Hacker. Before doing so, let's check the corresponding image name here. Here we have the corresponding uniquely generated name, which ends with 99. Now let's try to update the employee here. Now this time, let me select another image from the folder. I will select this image for Mason Corner. In order to indicate this field is already updated, I will append this asterisk marks here. Submit the form. Let me check the console window here. We have an error. Failed to load the resource. The server responded with status 400. From this URL itself, /employee undefined. So there is a problem with our employee ID here. Inside the Web API model class here, we have named the property as employee ID with capital D. As we have mentioned here, this conversion will be there. So employee ID will be converted into employee ID. But corresponding to this property, we have employee ID with small d here. So these two properties won't be binded together. Since this ID is an abbreviation for identifier, in almost all cases I have been using uppercase for abbreviations. So I will just rename this property to uppercase. For renaming this property, you could do this, press F2, update it properly, hit enter. Let's update that here also. We have used the same in our parent component here, employee list. So let's update that here and here. Let's save this, back to the application. Now let's try to update this employee again. Replace the image with a Mason Corner image. Just adding this asterisk marks to input field just to identify this is updated. Currently this employee image is here. After this update operation, there will be two images starting with this image name Mason Corner, and this image will be deleted. Let's check that after this form submission. I think it worked. See, here we have two images with Mason Corner, and previously Daniel Hacker image is already deleted. And here we have the updated values with new asterisk marks. Now you could check the update operation for this employee. This time I'm not changing this image, just updating these field values here. Spectre. Submit the form. We only updated corresponding employee name. Now finally, let's do the delete operation for uploaded image. For that, first of all, we will add a delete button beneath these employee details. So back to the parent component employee list. Let's add a delete button in a new line. So I will have this break line tag here. So here is the button. Let's apply a few classes from Bootstrap, btn, btn light, and we have one more custom class delete button. So initially this button will be hidden. When we hover on corresponding cards, this button can be seen. Inside this button we will be showing this phone awesome icon. So this is how it looks like. When we click on this delete button, we have to delete corresponding employee. So let's fire up a new function for onClick event here. OnClick. Here we will call this function onDelete. Into this function we will be passing this default event parameter of click event e, and then we have to pass the corresponding employee ID also. So first of all, I will call this pass in function. Into that we can pass this data dot employee ID. Now let's define the function up here on delete with two parameters e and the ID. Inside this function we can call this function delete with Axios method delete. Into this function we just need to pass this ID. Before doing the actual delete operation, we have to confirm the operation from user. So we can call this confirm function from JavaScript. Are you sure to delete this record? If user confirm this operation, we can call the method here. Employee API dot delete function. Into that we can pass this ID. Here we have the response callback. Inside that we will just call this function refresh employee list to update employee array, and here we have the catch function where we have to just log the error object. Now inside this function we have to do one more thing. For this card element we have already wired up a click event here. Inside that we have this button, delete button. It also has a function for onClick event. So when we click on this delete button, both of these onClick event will be triggered. We just need to call this onDelete function without calling this function show record for details. We can call this function stop propagation from this default parameter e here. Inside this delete operation, we are going to call the delete web method from our API. So let's update corresponding web method also. So here it is, delete employee. Inside the method, first of all, we will retrieve the corresponding employee record with the given ID. If there is no record with the given ID, we will return not found for not for error. If there is a record, we will delete that by calling this function remove. Before doing so, we have to delete corresponding image also, like we have done inside the update operation. So let's call the function delete image. Into that we can pass the image name. So employee model dot image name. Let's build this project. After successful build, back to the application. Now let me delete this employee here. Confirm this operation. So here we have deleted Daniel Hecker record. So that's all about React image upload, update and delete operations with ASP.NET Core Web API. You could find this project GitHub repository from this video description. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video, and for more awesome videos like this, please be subscribed to this channel CodAffection. Please share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can benefit from this. Have a nice day. Bye.